The first time Marcus Hale noticed the homeless girl, he didn't see her at all, not really, because men like him were trained by habit and power to look through people rather than at them, especially people who had nothing. People who existed on the margins like shadows that cluttered sidewalks and parks, but that afternoon his routine fractured in a way he would never forget, because his driver had stopped the car near the private academy's auxiliary park while Marcus was on a tense call about a hostile takeover, and through the tinted glass he glanced up just long enough to see his daughter Lily sitting on a worn wooden bench, her small legs swinging nervously, her backpack at her feet, and beside her, impassively, sat a girl no older than 17, hair tangled by wind and neglect, clothes too thin for the season, shoes split at the seams, holding a piece of chalk and drawing equations on the concrete as if the cracked pavement were a classroom board. And Lily was listening, really. Listening, eyes bright in a way Marcus had not seen in months, leaning forward, nodding, smiling, and Marcus' voice faltered mid-sentence as something sharp and unfamiliar pressed against his chest, because Lily had been failing math, failing confidence, failing joy despite every tutor money could buy, and here she was, absorbed, alive, learning from someone the world had discarded, and before Marcus could stop himself he ended the call abruptly, stepped out of the car, and strode toward them. With the authority that bent boardrooms to his will, his polished shoes clicking against the ground like a warning, and the homeless girl noticed him first, her body stiffening instantly, chalk pausing mid-stroke, eyes darting not with guilt but with the reflex of someone who had learned to expect trouble from well-dressed men, while Lily turned and beamed, "Daddy, look, sis helping me understand fractions, the kind that turn into decimals," and Marcus' heart clenched at the excitement in her voice even as his face hardened, because excitement was dangerous when it came from strangers, and he demanded sharply, "Who are you, and why are you talking to my daughter?" his tone drawing attention from nearby parents and guards. And the girl stood slowly, carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter the fragile peace, brushing chalk dust onto her threadbare jeans, and said softly, "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean any harm." She asked for help, and something about the way she said help. Not money, not food, but help, unsettled him, yet suspicion overpowered curiosity, because men like Marcus had learned that kindness without credentials was a risk, and he glanced at Lily, who clutched her notebook protectively and said, "Please don't make her go, Daddy, she explains it better than anyone," and the words hit him harder than any insult from a rival CEO, because better than anyone included Ivy League tutors, private instructors flown in at obscene cost, and he felt exposed. Challenged, as if his wealth had been quietly outperformed by a piece of chalk, and the homeless girl lowered her gaze, murmuring that she would leave, that she didn't want trouble, that she was just passing time before the shelter line opened. And the word shelter echoed in Marcus' mind with a strange hollowness, because shelters were things you funded through foundations, not places people you spoke to actually needed, and still he waved her away curtly, motioning to the guard, telling Lily it was time to go, and as the girl walked off, shoulders hunched against more than the cold, Lily's eyes filled with tears, a silent accusation that followed Marcus into the car and haunted the ride home, where Lily stared out the window and said nothing, and that night Marcus lay awake replaying the image of chalk on concrete, of numbers made simple by someone who owned nothing, and the next morning Lily refused breakfast and announced she didn't want her new tutor anymore, because they don't listen like she did, and Marcus snapped that she didn't know what was best for her, but the words tasted bitter, because deep down he knew she was right, and over the next week Lily's grades worsened, her spirit dimmed, and Marcus caught himself scanning the park every afternoon despite himself, until one day he arrived early and saw Lily already there, sitting on the ground this time, laughing softly as the homeless girl used pebbles and leaves to explain ratios, turning the park into a living lesson, and Marcus watched unseen, struck by the patience in the girl's voice, the way she waited for Lily to answer, never rushing, never condescending, and he felt something crack inside him, a realization that this girl wasn't improvising, she was teaching, truly teaching, and when he finally stepped forward, his tone was different, cautious, almost uncertain, asking where she learned to explain things like that, and the girl hesitated, eyes flickering with old memories, before saying, she used to love school, used to dream of becoming a teacher, until life decided otherwise, and Lily looked up at Marcus with quiet hope, and in that moment, surrounded by curious onlookers, Marcus made a decision that would set off a chain of events none of them could imagine, because instead of ordering her away, he invited the homeless girl to continue teaching Lily, right there, under his watch, just for today, and the girl agreed with visible disbelief, gratitude mixed with fear, and as the lesson resumed, Marcus noticed parents whispering, guards shifting uneasily, reputations trembling at the sight of a billionaire allowing his daughter to learn from a homeless girl. And he didn't yet know that this choice would soon expose secrets, shame the powerful, and redefine everything he believed about worth, knowledge, and humanity. But as he watched Lily finally understand, finally smile, he felt the first stirrings of a truth that would soon stun everyone. And as the scene faded, with the chalk once again scraping softly against the ground, the narrator's voice would lean in and remind viewers that stories like this change lives. That subscribing isn't just a click but a way to support powerful stories that reveal hidden humanity, inviting them to stay for what comes next, because Chapter 2 would reveal truths no one was ready for. When Marcus Hale allowed the homeless girl to keep teaching Lily that day, he thought he was making a small, controlled exception, a temporary kindness that would end quietly, but by the next afternoon word had already spread among parents, guards, and even staff at the academy, because power is loud when it bends, and people notice when a billionaire does something unexpected. And when Marcus arrived again, he found Lily waiting eagerly with her notebook clutched to her chest, scanning the park until she spotted the girl emerging from behind a row of trees, carrying nothing but a frayed backpack and the same piece of chalk, and Lily ran to her without hesitation, hugging her as if she were family. A sight that froze Marcus in place because he had never seen his daughter attach herself so completely to anyone outside his carefully curated world, and the girl stiffened at first, then slowly returned the hug, eyes glistening, whispering Lily's name like it was something precious she was afraid to lose. And when Marcus cleared his throat, the girl turned, bracing herself for rejection, but instead he surprised them both by asking her name, and she said it was Eliza, her voice steady but cautious. And something about finally knowing her name made her feel real in a way that unsettled him, because it's harder to dismiss people once they have names. And over the next hour Marcus sat nearby, pretending to check emails while actually listening, watching Eliza break down complex problems with stories and metaphors, turning numbers into friends rather than enemies, and Lily answered questions confidently, correcting herself without fear. And Marcus felt a quiet shame settle over him as he realized how many times Lily had been afraid to be wrong in front of paid experts who watched the clock. And when the lesson ended, Marcus offered Eliza money, discreetly, folded bills pressed into his palm, but Eliza shook her head, cheeks flushing, saying she didn't do it for that. That she just liked teaching, and the refusal stunned him more than any accusation could have, because people never refused his money, and that night Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He asked his assistant to investigate someone not to eliminate a risk, but to understand a person, and the truth came back heavier than expected, because Eliza hadn't always been homeless, she had been top of her class, a scholarship student with awards in mathematics and education, until her parents died in a sudden accident. Medical bills swallowed everything, relatives vanished, and the system she trusted quietly closed its doors, pushing her from dorm rooms to shelters, from classrooms to sidewalks. And Marcus stared at the report long after midnight, realizing the world had not failed Eliza loudly, but efficiently. And the next day he invited her to his office under the pretense of discussing Lily's progress, and Eliza arrived nervous, wearing borrowed clothes from the shelter, eyes wide as she took in glass walls and silent elevators. And when Marcus told her he knew her story, she braced for pity, but what she received instead was respect. As he asked her how she would design a real learning plan for Lily if resources didn't matter, and Eliza spoke passionately, forgetting her fear, outlining ideas about curiosity, paciencia, and trust. And Marcus listened the way Lily had, realizing that genius often goes unheard simply because it doesn't wear the right clothes. And when he offered Eliza a formal position as Lily's tutor, complete with salary, housing assistance, and a chance to finish her education, she cried, not because of the offer, but because someone finally believed in her without conditions. And news of the arrangement leaked, sparking outrage and ridicule from social circles who whispered about risks and reputations. But Marcus stood firm, publicly acknowledging Eliza's role at a school event. And when Lily took the stage and thanked her teacher, calling Eliza the reason she wasn't scared of math anymore, the room fell silent, because no one could argue with a child's truth. And in the weeks that followed, Lily's grades soared, but more importantly, her laughter returned. And Eliza moved from the shelter into a small apartment, from invisibility into purpose. And Marcus found himself changed too, questioning systems he once profited from, funding programs that didn't just donate but listened. And the moment that stunned everyone came when Marcus announced a new foundation led not by executives, but by educators like Eliza, people who understood struggle firsthand. And as cameras flashed and critics fell silent, Eliza stood beside him, no longer homeless, no longer hidden, and Lily squeezed both their hands, proof that kindness multiplied when shared, and as the story closes, the narrator reminds viewers that powerful stories like this reveal truths we overlook every day, that subscribing to the channel helps bring more real, emotional stories to light, and that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the least expected teachers, inviting everyone to stay connected, because the next story might change how they see the world too. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that greatness doesn't always wear a suit and wisdom doesn't always have a home, then don't let this moment pass you by. Stories like this are more than entertainment, daily reminders of who we can be when we choose compassion over judgment. By subscribing to this channel, you're helping us bring more real, emotional, life-changing stories to light, stories about hidden heroes, second chances, and the quiet power of kindness. So take a second, hit that subscribe button, and stay with us, because the next story might change the way you see the world, or even the way you see yourself.